let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel. Heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell.
All right, everybody. We still got a graphic on the screen. My bad. Still getting used to this nonsense. We got graphics and we got videos. We got all kinds of things. And there I am, flexing the Hillsdale College logo today very proudly. I'm a proud dad of a Hillsdale grad, and I like to let everybody know it. Good morning. Raising hell. Exactly what they were doing yesterday in Minnesota. Holy Nikes. What an absolute shit show. Sorry. I'm just going to let it fly, I think, at some points, because I am so infuriated. Anybody else want to punch? I just asked it in the chat as we got started this morning. Anybody else want to punch Jacob Fry right in the face? If you say no, I'll respect you. No, I won't. I'll call you a liar, because everybody and anybody that has an ounce of common sense wants to punch Jacob Fry right in the face. Who's Jacob Fry? Jacob Fry, you probably should know by now. Jacob Fry is the mayor of Minneapolis. And I don't know if you heard what this SOB said after the shooting yesterday in Minneapolis. He basically said, I choose Somali nationals and fraudsters and criminals over ICE. I don't want the fraudsters to go. I want ICE to go. And he said so very directly. Watch and listen.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done. We're going to be working towards justice as quickly as we possibly can right now. And justice is what we've all got to get.
This is the smarmy little prick who, during George Floyd, after George Floyd died of a drug overdose, he died of a drug overdose while in police custody. He overdosed on fentanyl and on methamphetamine. It's in the medical examiner's report. He overdosed and died in police custody. This is the little prick who led the crying and the fake crocodile tears and genuflected on a knee and led about a dozen other left-wing lunatics, including Governor Walz, including Nancy Pelosi, and bowing down at the loss of life of this wonderful St. George the Floyd. That's who this guy is. You heard what he just said. He just told ICE to get the fuck out of his city. His city is overrun with Somalian pirates. Sorry, not sorry. Somalian pirates steal and they rob and they thieve. This is who and what they do, whether it's on the high seas or whether it's in places that welcome them in by idiot mayors like this guy. I don't know how many million Somalis are in this country. They started coming in the 90s under Bill Clinton and then were expanded extraordinarily during Obama. I don't know how many there are, but this is not just a Minnesota problem. This is a nationwide problem, and they are here to overtake us all. You think I'm freaking kidding? I've got so much to share with you this morning, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it all. I'm going to do my level best. Because I've got great guests coming up this morning too, including J.R. Majewski, and I'm looking forward to that. He's going to be here in about 23, 24 minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I want to see if I can find the next part of all this. Oh, you know what? Let me give you this part. This is Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, responding to Jacob Fry and Tim Walz and their "let's blame the law enforcement agents who were under attack by your freaking radical left-wing lunatic." And then I won't even call them all left-wing lunatic residents, because some of them aren't even from Minnesota. Some of them, like the woman who was shot by the ICE agent, was from Missouri. But they come there to Minnesota and they all do the same thing. They attack ICE agents, they attack federal agents, law enforcement, and defend the gosh damn criminals.
Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota, we have seen homicides go up by over 50%. That's also during Mayor Fry's tenure as well. Since President Trump took office, Governor Walz has released over 470 violent criminals back onto the streets here in Minneapolis. He has another 680 of them still within his jurisdiction that he could give to us today to face the consequences for their crimes. Because Governor Walz and Mayor Fry refuse to protect Minnesotans, and instead they protect these criminals, that's why we are here. And we didn't just show up yesterday, we've always been here. Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota.
So while all of that was going on yesterday in Minneapolis, on Capitol Hill, there were hearings being held in the Oversight Committee. We talked to Congressman Jim Jordan on this program yesterday morning. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm diving right in headfirst into the stories this morning, and I didn't even really greet everybody in the chat. Welcome to Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. I appreciate you being here, seriously. J.R. Majewski is going to join us, former congressional candidate here in Ohio. Massive online influencer, has a huge presence on a number of social platforms. We're going to bring JR on at about 7:30. At 8:30, we're going to talk to, this is all Eastern, of course, anybody who's watching outside of Ohio or outside of the time zone. We're going to talk to Dr. Everett Piper, who will join us from outside. He's Central Time. He's in Oklahoma. But Dr. Everett Piper will join us to talk about a host of things, including what's going on in New York City with Mom Donnie. But I really want to kind of just laser lock into this thing right now, because there's so many elements to it and so much that you have to hear. While all of that was going on, and you know what? It's fire hose time. While all of that was going on, there were hearings on Capitol Hill. And on Capitol Hill in the Oversight Committee, the mission of the Oversight Committee is to investigate all of this fraud, the tens of billions of dollars of fraud that have been uncovered thus far. And that's what this is all about. I've got audio for you and video from a whole lot of people, including Brandon Gill from Texas, who's on the Oversight Committee, who managed to drill down perfectly on some of the fraud enablers in Minnesota. Listen.
Minnesota are on food stamps?
No.
54%. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Well, to be clear, a majority of the...
It's 7%. There's a big difference between 54% and 7%, is there not?
Excuse me, sir, could I answer the question?
Let me move on. We've got a lot of questions here. What percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on Medicaid?
I don't know.
It's 73%. Do you know what that number is for Minnesota native households?
Again, you're using the phrase Minnesota native households, but the majority.
The number is 18%. That's quite an astounding difference. I think we would agree.
Can I answer the question, please?
Let me ask you one more, and then we can go on to that. What percentage of Somali-headed households are on welfare in general?
I don't know.
It's 81%. What about, let me just ask you, after 10 years of being in the United States, what percentage of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare?
I don't know.
The number is 78%. So even after 10 years, 78% of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Again, you're using
non-Somali immigrant-headed households.
If I can just answer the question, when you're using the phrase native Minnesotans, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are as Minnesotans.
So that's all of this was going on, like I said, in Minnesota, as they were trying to blow the lid off of and show, the American people and investigate exactly how deep the graft is there. I've got a ton of that audio that I want to get into, but let's get back to the streets of Minneapolis, the streets that Jacob Fry says law enforcement doesn't belong on. Law enforcement is causing the problem here, not the actual, protesters who are obstructing justice and obstructing law enforcement on the streets of Minnesota. It's not them. They're not the problem. The problem is law enforcement being there. That's why Jacob Fry told them to get the F out of Minneapolis. This is a little bit of an example of what they're dealing with.
Get out of the way! Get out! Chris, get out the way! Get out the way of the truck!
See, I'm gonna pause that here because I'm gonna disapprove a little bit with what the federal agents and the ICE individuals are doing here. I want to know why they're not throwing them to the ground. Don't just throw them out of the way so they stop obstructing the official work of the federal agents. Don't just grab them, spray them, and throw them out of the way. Throw them to the ground, put a knee in the small of their back, and put zip ties on every one of their gosh damn hands and wrists. Arrest them all and lock their happy little asses up. All right? I was coming home last night, and I flipped on the camera to do it. I have not done a Bob France Road Rants in some time. I flipped on the camera as I was on my way home last night, and I just said something that had to be freaking said. The First Amendment guarantees us the right to protest. So these idiots, if they want to protest, they can protest. What they cannot do is insert themselves into the middle of a law enforcement operation and obstruct it and cause dangerous scenarios for the law enforcement agents, blocking their vehicles, boxing them in, getting in their way as they're walking. Anything that obstructs law enforcement is absolutely not protected by the First Amendment. You're not a protester then. You are literally a criminal, and you should be treated like one. Lock every one of these happy little asses up and freaking throw away. I don't want to say throw away the key, but I kind of do, but at least for a while. Some sort of deterrent needs to be put in place here. Something needs to deter these lunatics who are not even all Minnesotans. Although I will tell you, enough of them are that I want to trade Minnesota even up for Greenland. Literally, if I could carve it out, or at least, let's change the borders and give them to Canada. We take Greenland, somebody else take Minnesota off of our hands. It's just become the most unbelievably barbaric piece of trash state we have in the Union. And I don't give a crap who hears that. Tim Jazz Hands, Tampon Tim Walz, literally has helped destroy that state. Mayor Jacob Fry destroying Minneapolis. I mean, in all seriousness, and these loons, they learn nothing. They learn nothing without hard lessons, and hard lessons need to be taught, such as, like I said, don't just throw them out of the way, officers, throw them down hard. Kneel on their backs hard. Lock them up, zip tie them tightly, Make it cut into the skin a little bit. Make them think when they get out in 2-3 days, when the crew, the posse, the Somali support posse is getting ready to flock down for another protest of ICE and another obstruction of ICE. Make them think to themselves as they look down at the little indentions into their wrist, the little cut skin there, as they kind of shift, and oh my God, that knee in the back. Make them think, no, I'm good. I'm going to sit this one out. Y'all go ahead. I'm going to stay home. Deterrence needs to happen. Deterrence. And that's how it happens. Make the FO of FAFO a little bit harder. Make them find out a little bit more directly. A deterrent will go a great ways to stopping this crap. Here's more of the crap. Any one of them that does anything so much as swing an umbrella at the vehicle, done. Boom. Face down in the goddamn snow, face down, knee in the back, zip ties on, you're gone. Bring out a bus as a paddy wagon. Bring out a bus. Fill it. Then dump them off into a room and then come back and fill it again. I don't care if they're throwing snowballs at the vehicle. I don't care if they're swinging umbrellas in the way. I don't care if they're walking across the street as agents are walking by to do their jobs. That's obstruction. Treat them like they're obstructing. Look at this. Brings back memories. Did you hear one of these little stupid pricks? Bring back memories. Yeah, it does bring back memories a little bit, doesn't it? It brings back memories of 2020. It's George Floyd all over again. That's the reality of the situation. Look at some of this. Look, here's just some of the coverage. Walls and Fry should be arrested for inciting 2020 2.0. This is a conservative site. 1,000% they should. 2020 2.0. Rioters chanting ICE out now, smashing doors of federal courthouse in Minneapolis. They're smashing the doors. That's vandalism. That, according to the left, would be insurrection. There's a link there of Scott Jennings on CNN taking all of these leftist idiots apart. Woman killed while driving into an ICE agent is identified as the big story, of course, of the day. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot with J.R. Majewski. We're going to get into the Ohio aspect of this too. But what happened yesterday in Minnesota was a game changer. I want to share this. Let me find the right link. Yeah, now this one is interesting. In less than 90 seconds, according to Curtis Houck, and on a liberal network, so give them some grace here, this is a really good segment on NBC's Nightly News with their anchor on a frame-by-frame breakdown of the shooting in Minneapolis. The shooting, of course, of a 36-year-old woman who is a professional rabble-rouser, somebody who has never met the deterrent till now, and now it's too late. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to make fun of the dead. But this is somebody who has never taught the lesson from her obstructionist, law-breaking activities to the point where maybe she didn't want to go back down and break laws and obstruct police and federal agents anymore. She never learned her lesson because there was never anybody doing anything to provide a deterrent. So she went out there. She guns it as she starts to turn away. You can see the wheel spin. I'll cover all of this, but she guns it right at the agent who ends up shooting her. And then, of course, the left is screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." What would they would have stood there and cheered about the death of what they called a Nazi if that officer had been mowed down by this woman's vehicle. If he found himself under her wheels, they would have freaking cheered. But this is a breakdown of what went down, and this was on NBC Nightly News. And as Curtis said, and I just had that little tweet up there, give them a little bit of grace. It's a liberal network. They're going to start out a certain kind of way, but watch how they break it down.
Stuff we were learning from the get-go. Again, the police chief saying this vehicle was blocking the federal agents right there.
That's right, Tom. And a big caveat, we don't know what happened before this, but they're definitely going to look at the fact this is an unmarked vehicle, but the lights are on. These are clearly members of law enforcement, so that's at least known to this driver.
Let's play the video because something else happens right here. Those officers approach the vehicle. They try to open the door. Let's stop it here. How will this help the investigators?
Whatever is said here, what these officers say, if the driver said anything or not, could really help them understand whether or not they thought there was some sort of an imminent threat. Was this person trying to listen to them? Were they scared? Or was this going to be a problem?
And then, of course, what the driver does next. Let's play that video. Trying to leave there. One of the officers felt like they were forced to fire, and they do. We want to show another angle, reverse angle of the same incident here. We're going to freeze it. This is that same angle here. And what does this show?
This is the angle, by the way, that you will not see on most broadcasts. That's why it's so surprising that NBC News, of all places, actually allowed this to be shown and allowed this to be broken down frame by frame or close to frame by frame as they are right here. But as you can see, the nut job who was blocking the ICE vehicles, which, again, that's why, they were saying, well, what were they saying? It would be good to hear. You can hear it on some of the other videos. They were saying, get out of the car, get out of the car. Because they were going to arrest her because she was indeed obstructing justice, obstructing law enforcement. That just by parking her vehicle there in the way of the ICE vehicles for too many days, for too many weeks, for too many months now, that all this crap has been going on, not just in Minnesota, but other places where ICE is being obstructed, in Portland, in San Francisco, wherever. They're not arresting these people. They're just telling them to move. And then they're letting them move. And then what does that do? That emboldens them to and others to do more of it because there were no consequences. If you don't bring the FO, they'll never to stop them from FA, and I'm trying to be gentle by not using the words here, but the harsher you make the find out part, the less likely is they'll FA the next time. But when you make it easy and you're just, moving them off of the road and telling them get back, and so forth, instead of arresting them and charging them all with obstruction of law enforcement, it's only going to encourage and embolden more. And that's what happens. So anyway, let's get back to the angle here. And you're going to see and again, kudos to NBC, of all places, NBC News willing to show this angle. You can find this angle online in a lot of places. But most of the time, the left-wing media is not going to allow, their audiences to see the reality of what happens here, of when she swerves and turns toward that officer, and then, most importantly, guns it. He has no choice but to protect himself. Because much to the surprise, I believe, of many American citizens, a vehicle is a deadly weapon. Shocking, right? And I say that only half jokingly. Just because, the left has found a way to demonize guns to make guns the cause of all of the violence, not the holder of the gun. Okay, but the gun is only a tool. And if it can be used to kill, okay, fine. But who's using it? That's the killer, not the weapon. Same thing with vehicles. If you've got a nut job behind the wheel, it's like a nut job with his finger on the trigger. All he's got to do, the trigger just has to get a quick pull. And with the vehicle, it's a quick flooring it and boom, the person in front of it is done. No chance. Unless that person is able to defend himself as this ICE agent did. So you're not going to see much of this in many, of the legacy news media, but you saw it last night on NBC Nightly News. So let's give them the last 50 seconds here or 40 seconds here.
Freeze it. This is that same angle here. And what does this show us, Tom?
Well, this appears to show an officer right in front of the vehicle. That in between the way that the vehicle was moving and the timeline of that, how was the officer responding in that split second going to be critical for investigators.
Finally, one more piece of evidence we want to talk about here, and it is the bullet hole in the front of the windshield. What will this tell investigators?
You look at this, you look at ballistics, you look at witness statements, you look at other video, all going to be part of this investigation. But Tom, it's going to take some time.
All right. So NBC, again, with at least a little bit of, a fair look at what happened, because the bullet came in the front of the windshield, as you can see, which means what? It means obviously the officer was in the line of fire. The line of fire, meaning the vehicle. Again, it's not an actual gunfire. It's not actual gunfire, but we're talking about he was about to be hit by that vehicle. He was in the line of that person's path as they floored it. And he literally had to fire to defend himself and was barely able to spin out of the way, but still got hit. He would have been killed had he not done what he did, which is exactly what self-defense means. And now we've got Jacob Fry, like I said, this piece of trash, telling ICE agents to get the F, and he said it. I played it for you, out of Minnesota. And now Tampon Tim with his jazz hands a-flailing is going to do the same thing here. He's going to tell, he's trying to tell ICE agents that they're no longer welcome in his state.
This morning we learned that an ICE officer shot and killed someone in Minneapolis. My deepest condolences to the family, to the loved ones who had to learn about this tragic event on national television. We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear.
How about the consequences of radical leftists who have no respect for the rule of law, attacking and obstructing law enforcement? Why does the American left hate law enforcement so much? Why do they hate laws so much? Why do they hate holding people who break them accountable so much? It's all of the time. And like I said, I'm watching these videos again, and let's play some of the obstruction here again, because you really need to see this and understand it for what it is, the chaos here. I don't see the agents being hard enough. Let's watch this part again. Let me pull it back up. I don't see the agents, again, providing enough of the FO. Yeah, they're doing little sprays of the bear spray or the pepper spray or whatever, the tear gas or whatever to kind of move them back. I don't want them just moved back. I want them on the ground. And then I want somebody else tying them up on the ground with zip ties. And then I want somebody else loading them like freshly killed game into the back of a pickup truck or into a paddy wagon or into a bus and taken down to the jail. And if you've got to stuff them in there like sardines in a little damn aluminum can, do it. Because deterrent has to happen. If there's no deterrence happening, they'll do it again and again and again. And there will be more shootings. There will be more officers justifiably and righteously defending themselves against these criminal obstructionists that have to shoot. And then you're going to have jazz hands out there crying some more, and Jacob Fry crying some more, cussing out agents and not saying anything about the law breakers. They turned the law enforcement agents into the villains and the law breakers into the victims when it is literally upside down. Watch this crap. Look at it. Blocking ICE vehicles, physically blocking ICE vehicles. Bam! That's an obstruction charge. Blocking ICE vehicles and then throwing stuff at the ICE agents. Bam! That's an obstruction charge and probably an assault charge. Why aren't these people being arrested? You give them too much leeway. It's like your dog, except I don't want to insult our dogs, but they have to know how much lead that they have, right? If you put them outside, tie them outside on a lead, they kind of know how long it is. They know how far they can go before I'm about to get choked, right? They know that. They've got to, especially if it's a tie out in the middle of the yard, they know what their perimeter is, what the circumference is. They know how far they can go without being choked. We need to teach these professional protesters, these agitators, these left-wing lunatics who hate cops and hate federal law enforcement agents, how much lead they have. We need to teach them before they get choked down what they're allowed to get away with. And what they're allowed to get away with is what the First Amendment allows, and that's it. If you want to stand off to the side and protest and yell and hold signs, fine. As long as you are indeed off to the side. You take one step in front of a vehicle, one getting into the face, the nose-to-nose confrontations with an agent, calling him Nazi. You step across their path as they're walking by. You have obstructed law enforcement. And now that's your lead. That's how much, because now you're about to be choked. Metaphorically. I don't want anybody being choked, but I want them being dropped to the ground, knee in the small of the back until zip ties are applied, and then again, freshly killed game loaded onto the back of a truck and take them down to the jail. It's literally the only way. I'm sorry for the redundancy, but we have to end this. I had a friend yesterday. You want to watch more of the chaos while I pull up this tweet or text message?
Move! Get out of the way! Get out! Chris, get out the way! Get out the way of the truck! Move!
You see what they're doing there? They're taking these nuts and they're grabbing them and they're pushing them off to the side of the road, and then they're basically saying, now stay there, and walking away. No, don't just walk away. Tie them up. Cuff them, zip them, whatever you got. Tie them up, wait for the arrest. Wait for the transport vehicle. I had a friend yesterday text me about 4:20 in the afternoon. Said it's amazing how the leftists have all paired the ICE agent in Minnesota. I think he's doing voice to text. It's not supposed to be paired. Never mind that she tried to impede a police/law enforcement action. Then she was given a lawful command to exit her vehicle, and that's, of course, the woman who shot. Then she tries to run people over, and the left says, oh, she was just trying to get away. We have left-wing lunatics on the internet defending this third world inbred terrorist that was probably illegal and benefiting from fraud. They're defending her and at the same time saying Ashley Babbitt deserved it. Well, that racist piece of blank cop, talking about Michael Byrd, the cop in D.C. that shot and killed Ashley Babbitt, unarmed, who was attacking no one, who was not in a vehicle flooring it, who was being pressed up against a window by a massive crush of people behind her. I don't want to get into all of that. Point is, my friend said, they want bloodshed in the streets, and we're going to hit a tipping point, and the real mother effers in this world are going to get fed up, and then it's going to get ugly. And my response to my friend who sent this text, I'm going to try to clear the decks here for our guest, who I see is in the green room now. My response was, we better hope that doesn't happen. And he said it will, because eventually it's going to hit a tipping point. I mean, we've had politicians and activists for how long calling for violence against ICE agents. And now the media and these bots lines are just flat out lying about what happened today. And I said, I know, but we have to stay under control. And what I mean by that, of course, is I don't want a civil war, because when there's a civil war, even if you win it, which I firmly believe that would happen, there's going to be casualties on both sides, and innocent people who don't want any of this to happen are going to be victimized. Maybe your family, maybe mine. I don't want this to happen. But he said, when groups like the Somalis start getting violent, stuff's going to hit the fan. Shit's going to hit the fan. I got to remember we're unfiltered on Rumble. They're a very violent type of people. When that money starts drying up, look out. You're already seeing it start to happen. Minnesota will be ground zero. They're going to start running through the streets, assaulting people and killing people. I'm telling you, they were sold a bill of goods, and it's about to be taken away. And what he meant by that part, I've talked about on this program. People have been killed for less than stopping a multi-billion-dollar fraud ring. Okay? Fraudsters who are stealing, millions of dollars, much less billions of dollars collectively through their operations. They like their billions of dollars. If those billions of dollars are threatened to be taken away from them, they will kill to keep it. Okay? And whether that means kill, law enforcement agents just to try to bust all of this up. And Jacob Fry, I wonder how much he's getting. Tim Walz, I wonder how much he's getting. They're up there yesterday screaming, get him out of our city. Why would you want the ICE out of the city? Because you don't want anybody paying any more attention to the fraud that's going on in your city, because you're probably pocketing a good amount of that. But the reality is, yeah, people have been killed. And people like Nick Shirley, who's got to be under Brandon Tatum's security organization now. Nick Shirley, who exposed that up there. People have been killed for less than exposing stuff that takes away billions of dollars in fraud. Criminals like their booty. You know, they like what they steal and they don't want to lose it. And then if other people are getting in the way of that, like the ICE agents, they'll kill them too. You call people Nazis and Gestapo long enough, normal people might hear that and say, yeah, and then go back to, doing what they're doing. The lunatic fringe, though, which might only be the 1% or 2% of individuals on that side of the political spectrum, they won't just say, yeah, and go on back to their whatever activity they're doing. They'll say, these people are Nazis and the Gestapo. What would we have done if we encountered the Nazis and the secret police, back in the late 1930s and into 1940s? We'd have killed them. We'd have killed them to protect them, to stop them. The lunatic fringe only needs to hear a word or two to get the hell out there and start doing it. And that's what the danger is here. All right. You saw his face. There it is. We want to welcome to the program a guy that I've known for some time, but I have not talked to in many, many minutes, as the saying goes. He is a former congressional candidate for District 9 in the state of Ohio. Ran against Marcy Kaptur a few years ago. He has since become a massive conservative influencer, a guy who can move the needle and who can tell you what's really happening. He is J.R. Majewski, and he's joining us now on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. Brother, it's been a minute. What's happening?
Not much, buddy. How are you doing? And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I appreciate you doing it. You've made quite a name for yourself in the influencer circles. So I know you've been in the green room for a few minutes, and you saw what happened yesterday. Reactions?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I think every American at our core, we want to live in a society where law enforcement can do exactly what the name entails, which is enforce the law. I want to live in a society where they have the ability to detain criminals or detain suspects and keep every other person, especially my friends and family, safe. And for the past, 4.5 years under Biden, we didn't have law enforcement. And now that we have a competent leader in office, we have it back. And there's an adjustment that has to happen, unfortunately, with some people on the fringe left. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is perpetuated by an ideology, and that ideology has nothing to do with putting America first, and that's what the country voted for.
What's the ideology? We don't want to just say liberalism.
It's communism at its core. I think that's where the left is going. I think it's a free fall domino effect. Once you step over the line, you keep walking downward, and you take a look at New York with Mamdani. People were very, very afraid of him taking office. I think it's going to be a blessing in the long run for the right. We're going to have an opportunity to see firsthand what communism's like, and maybe it'll be a subtle reminder to some people that don't recall history very well. And fortunately, we have a rookie communist in office in New York. We don't have a seasoned person that could maybe keep the bows and glitter active. I think Mamdani is going to fail, and like I said, I think we're going to get to watch that firsthand. And unfortunately, it might be to the demise of New York City. But if there was ever a resilient place in the country, it's one of them.
Yeah, I don't want to deviate too much from Minnesota and Ohio. I want to get to Ohio in a second, but New York's our financial hub of the country. It's the epicenter. If it dies, if the demise of New York City is something that happens because of Mamdani, we're all going to pay a pretty significant price. I want to see him fail too, but I don't want to see him fail by tearing the city of New York down to the point where it is broke. And like I said, our entire economy is affected by it.
Sure, and I don't think anyone does, but I think with a person like the president in office and with his I would say, sensitivities to New York City and how it functions, how it operates, and that being his birthplace. I don't think he's going to allow it to fail per se. I think he's pretty attentive, but maybe, and when I say fail, maybe it's more of the system failing, the political system, and people in New York realizing what the Democratic Party is becoming, and that's the Communist Party, and hopefully that'll inspire them to walk away. And if it catches enough momentum, maybe it can happen somewhere in the during the campaigning for the governor's race, because you'd like to see a red New York.
Yeah, well, you're right. We would. And by the way, I want people to understand, and most people, I think, who are going to be watching this, listening live right now, watching live right now, and those who are going to see this later, understand you're not being overly dramatic. You're not exaggerating. It's not hyperbole to say communism, because this guy, the mayor that we're talking about here, said,
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
literally moments after his swearing in, he said we're going to be collectivists. And for those who don't understand, communism, which you're using, and collectivism are, socialism, communism, and collectivism, I mean, honestly, are all synonyms, really. They're branches of the same tree of Marxism. And people need to understand, when he says we are going to impose the warmth of collectivism on people, we are talking about a move toward ending private property, massive wealth redistribution, confiscation, collectivism, and then the redistribution as needed according to the state. And all that's done, JR, and you know this, is kill over 100 million people in the last century and a half. Any socialist, collectivist, communist system has led to the starvation and the famine and the murder and the deaths of literally over 100 million people.
Yep, 100%. Collectivism is the equivalent of calling a trans woman a woman. I mean, it's still a man, and it's wordplay. And this is how the left has been able to push this stuff through over the past 6-7 years, is because they've played semantics, and they've messed with our core vocabulary so much, and we've allowed it, and that's caused shockwaves of confusion that have resonated through our youth, and now they don't necessarily understand the difference in some of these words the way we do, and it's intentional, all intentional.
No question about that. Jared, I want to pivot a minute here to Ohio now, and let's get away from the radicalism and the fraud for just a moment, although we'll come back to it. And just last night, I want to ask you about last night. Last night in Cleveland, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is the presumptive GOP nominee. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to Casey Putsch, by the way, to find out who he is. Most people don't know anything about him, myself included. So he's going to be on this show tomorrow. And we'll see what his plan is here to challenge Vivek for the Republican nomination. But Vivek announced his lieutenant governor pick, who was Senate President Rob McCauley. What's your impression? Two things here, JR. What's your impression of the Ramaswamy campaign thus far? And then number two is, what do you make of his lieutenant governor pick?
Well, as far as Vivek goes, I endorsed him. I've supported him. I did his campaign kickoff speech in Toledo when he announced, and I think he's a great guy. I think Vivek is somebody who has gotten to where he is today without my advice and without my constructive criticism. Now, that being said, he doesn't really need me, and my opinions will have little to no effect on how much he can achieve here. But I can tell you that the base is not excited about the selection of Rod McCauley, and they're not happy. And again, I reflect back to the fact that Vivek got here based on a lot of things, personal intuition, and just what he brings to the table. So I'm hopeful that his decision at its core was strategic, and he has a plan for it. Because again, like I said, the base is not too happy with the Rod McCauley. As far as Vivek's campaign goes, I mean, I know he's using the same folks. I can't remember the name of the entity, but same folks that Bernie Moreno used for his Senate run, and I think they've been pretty good so far. I mean, there's always a danger with running such a long campaign and announcing so early, because you give the opportunity to get shots on target from the opposition. You give them a bigger window. So there's always more opportunity. But Vivek has been stellar so far. He's had a couple mistakes, a couple quips, but I think at the end of the day, he's been able to recover pretty well.
Yeah, every time I've talked to him, I've come away even more impressed, and I feel very good about him, generally speaking. But I'm watching a lot of conservatives who aren't in Ohio, and it's weird. And I'm talking about people that are in the same group chats, the same Signal chats that I'm in, the same Facebook groups and pages, and everybody's talking about this, that, and where we all agree almost all of the time, on everything MAGA, America First, Trump, whatever. When the subject of Vivek comes up, there's a portion, I don't know, I'm going to guess just looking at comment windows, maybe a third of the people that are, again, all united when it comes to Vivek. They're either skeptical or outright no,
Yeah.
not doing it, not
Yeah.
doing it. They see a problem, and this was before Macaulay.
Mhm.
Do you know why that is? Can you figure it out? I'm watching all of this, this interplay, and I'm trying to figure out exactly why it is that there is going to be a split, a division in some way in the party.
Well, I think there's a general reluctance to trust anybody that comes in at this point at the executive level in Ohio and says that they're an outsider and they're going to make a difference. Because time after time we've seen people come to the table and due to not being able to get our ducks in a row as a party, we've put two good candidates against one another, three good candidates against one another when they should have just aligned. I think the winner was blatantly obvious, and we could have gotten rid of certain people like DeWine, and we didn't do that. And so, because of those behaviors, many people followed certain candidates that they wish would have made those step asides, and they didn't. So, after trusting them and putting all the time and energy into them, seeing that they were self-serving to much regard, I think most people now are just skeptical, and there's a perpetuated kind of nationalist mindset where if you're not of a certain skin color or you don't have a certain European type look, then you're not American or you're not American first, or you have the inability to be America first. And I think that's a misnomer, and that's just tribal thought. And again, it goes back to the semantics and playing on the rhetoric, and this is all kind of a reverberation from what the Democrats have been doing to society. Young folks are confused, and they don't realize Vivek is born and raised here in Ohio, and he's just as American as you or I. But again, it's all perpetuated by all these different social issues and social challenges that have been placed upon us by the Democrats, and we've been so passive. We've allowed it to happen.
I think a lot of people, JR, again, that I've read and messaged online with, some of them were Dave Yost fans. Some of them were, and I like Dave Yost. Some of them were just really ticked off that the moment he declared last year, President Trump immediately endorsed, and so did the state GOP. When the Ohio GOP immediately says, okay, we're endorsing, we're not even going to have a primary, it forced Yost to say, well, then what am I bothering for? So he dropped out, and anybody else that had any designs on this dropped out as well. Did the Ohio GOP, or is the Ohio GOP handling this well enough? Because I think that's why some of the people who are, I don't know, distrustful of Vivek at this point are, because they feel like he is being forced on them without any choices.
I think there's kind of a challenge when you're a candidate, especially if you're somebody who's anti-establishment. And I think this can be seen in the presidential run for Ron DeSantis as well. You try so hard to beat the establishment that at some point the establishment figures out that they're not going to beat you. At least not in the election. And so what do is they infiltrate and they try to embrace you. And these outsider candidates fall victim to that because, again, they've tried so hard just to keep these folks at bay or to be accepted because, again, we're the outsiders. We're trying to get in to effectively make a regime change. And once the establishment opens their doors, some of these candidates, they just fall victim to the infiltration and they feel embraced, they feel supported. But the first opportunity the establishment gets, it turns and shows its teeth. And that happened with DeSantis. He was beckoned into running against President Trump, saying that he was going to get all the support. The party, manipulated the parties down in Florida, tried to push him to the front and anoint him and endorse him. That didn't happen, but that was an attempt. And that happened, I think, with Vivek. And the Ohio party is the Republican Party of Ohio has so much work to do to prove themselves back to a good portion of their voter base that votes Republican only because it's the only sane party, not because of what the party is doing as as a body. And the worst thing that they can do for a candidate, especially somebody like Vivek, is embrace him publicly the way they're doing, because it just leaves a kind of a dirt on Vivek's brand and what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well explained. What do you make of the fact that DeWine, as of a month ago, basically said he's not ready to back Vivek Ramaswamy? He's not ready to do that. I interviewed him last April, Mike DeWine. It was the last time I talked to him. It was the first time I talked to him since COVID, because he wouldn't come back on because I destroyed his stupid idiotic plans and the power he gave Amy Acton. But back in April, I said, are you going to endorse the Republican nominee? And he said, oh, of course I am, but we don't know who it's going to be yet, because there's a lot more people are going to enter this race. And I said, are you sure? I said, because your former director of health that you gave all of the power in the state to is going to be on the other side. I thought maybe you might want to give her the power to state back. He got all pissed off at me the way that I said that. But then a month ago, if you recall, he basically said, he's not sure what he's going to do yet. He's not ready to endorse Vivek yet. And then Macaulay gets the pick. Last night it becomes official, in an immediate statement from Mike DeWine says, oh, I'm so enthusiastic and excited to endorse Ramaswamy Macaulay. That can't make us, as conservative Ohioans, not necessarily Republican Ohioans, but conservative Ohioans, feel good. Now DeWine is all in. Now that Macaulay, I kind of feel like reflexively, if DeWine is for, we should be against.
Yeah, I think your intuition is spot on, and I think that's probably the core intuition or reaction of most Ohioans, especially those that represent the base. We both know, Bob, and some of your audience probably knows, but if you don't, I'll tell you, nothing in politics is free. 99% of what these folks do is barter. Everything that they do is effectively a barter transaction. And you can bet that Governor DeWine was withholding his endorsement for Vivek because there was something that he wanted. I don't know this for a fact. This is speculation, but I would think that Governor DeWine would want some commitment that certain investigations with a certain utility weren't brought back into the Justice Department. And I think we can tell by just known lateral relationships between Matt Huffman and Rod McCulley that they have a very good relationship with the governor. And perhaps there was a deal struck to put someone that was loyal to Governor DeWine within the executive branch. I think that's probably the most likely scenario.
JR, just because you are so politically astute, and I think your analysis is spot on, and you have run before, I got to ask, are you done? Is there a chance you might run again for something?
We'll see. I put some strong consideration into running for the 9th again this cycle. Derek Marin, who ran last cycle, the NRCC effectively pushed. They negotiated me out based on the potential risk of losing the House, and if Capter wasn't defeated, who would be blamed, and they really leaned in on my loyalty to President Trump, saying that I wouldn't want to have been the guy that lost the seat, and yada yada yada. So that being said, I really considered running this cycle, and what it boiled down to is I spent most of my personal wealth running the first time, and getting back into a position to rebuild that, knowing that, and just it's not a presidential year. And again, you look back at Marin and his loss, and people say, well, Derek Marin lost because Tom Prust, the independent, entered the race and stole 20,000 votes. The reality of it is that, number one, the Libertarian wouldn't have been running if I was on the ballot. They made that clear before they ran. And Derek Marin just failed to get those 20,000 Trump voters. And you only needed 88% of the Trump vote to beat Capter. And I can tell you by polling from Fabrizio and McLaughlin, who are Trump pollsters, I was guaranteed 91% of the Trump vote in the primary. So I would have been in office twice now. You know what I mean? So back to your question, am I done? I don't know. Right now, I don't have the fire, but I do see a window of opportunity next cycle, helping with JD, and he and I become friends. So, you know, he understands he has a loyal political operative in me in Ohio if he needs it.
I haven't talked to Marin yet, but last week I had Josh Williams on. What are your thoughts on Josh and his run?
I've endorsed Josh. I think
Oh, you have? I didn't
yeah.
realize.
Yep. I endorsed Josh right away. Josh has become a friend of mine. When I ran, he was a guy that was loyal, somebody I can count on, and you know, we might not agree on every issue, but what I can tell you about Josh is he is very open-minded and negotiable. He doesn't disagree without being disagreeable. So he's willing to have conversations as hard as they are. And we've disagreed on certain things. He's passed or he's advocated for certain pieces of legislation in the state that I didn't like, and you know, I was the first person to tell him so. And we've had some tough conversations as a result, but we've come to just even a stronger place each time. So I think Josh represents what the 9th district is, and that's a person that grows up in a tough area, tough economy, tough social structure, tough inner city. And if you work hard and your heart's in the right place, you can become something. And I think Josh reflects that very, very accurately. And I think he should be the person that has the opportunity to go after Marcy.
Yeah, I do too. I don't do endorsements in primaries, but I like Josh a lot. He knows that. I've had him on many, many times to talk about a lot of these important things. I'm just curious though. You said you did disagree on certain legislation that he pushed, proposed, sponsored. Can you give me an example? Give me one.
One was the intervention with the from the state on the refinery workers and how their training would work. They wanted to have like state level intervention to ensure that these folks were coming in and working under a qualified training program. And my position was that they should utilize OSHA, and you know, they should really push the buttons on some of the institutions that are already in place, rather than put the House Republicans on the hook for putting together something so instrumental as safety, especially personnel safety. It all had to do with the refinery workers that were killed, and he disagreed, and his disagreement with me was rational after he put it into perspective. It's that this was only intended to be temporary. It was meant to put something in place so that they could ensure safety, because without putting the state directly involved immediately, there would be no kind of overseeing body. And I could align with that, because I think safety is of the utmost importance. And if you know, they have to be the referees in that case, that's fine. I just didn't want to see them putting themselves, you know, on the ticket. And again, I think there should be a very distinct separation between private industry and our government. And I kind of felt like they were pushing to cross that line. But after hearing the intent and having the conversation, I could align with where he was going.
I like that. I like you guys were able to kind of, you know, understand a little bit more. And that's the way it ought to be. Jared, you got a few minutes left to talk about fraud. You still got?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to scroll here. I'm going to put something up on the screen, have a look, and everybody else going to have a look here too. And this is just going to be a little bit of an X scroll of some of the things that I saved yesterday from last night, what we have found out. Tudor Dixon reporting, Minnesota was the tip of the iceberg. Daycare fraud exposed in Ohio to the tune of $20 million in the first few hours of investigation. This has the attention of General Flynn. Massive fraud, waste, and abuse in Ohio. Someone at DOJ needs to track down the laundering through PACs and other entities. Where's the governor in all of this? Governor Mike DeWine. And then he tagged in AG Pam Bondi. He's reposting, as you can see, or responding to. This is the listed location of the auditing firm that, oh, okay, that's the Minnesota thing. Let me go back here. No, it isn't. That is Ohio. Mm-hmm. The audits for both the Minnesota and Ohio on the NGOs that we have linked to potential fraud. You cannot make this up. Elon Musk talking about, I'm sorry, I've got a full scroll here. I want to find the rest of the stuff on the Ohio fraud that was discovered yesterday. Mehek Cook commented on it. She was part of the investigators going out there and finding some of this fraud. Okay, this is one of the ones that the general was responding to from Walter Kurt there. Agency has identified $20 million in fraud at Ohio daycares just in the first couple of hours of audit. And I'll bring that one and share this video with you before I get you to comment. This is what I mentioned a few moments ago, JR, when I was talking about the takeover and why we need, how we're going to have to fight back against this. I want to play this for you if I can. Let me zoom it out here.
Wait, is this going to be one day America will become...
This is one of the Somali fraudsters. We got to recognize that it's not just fraud that we're fighting against here. And what's, this $20 million that was exposed in a couple of hours, it's not just about the money. It's not just about the fraud. It is about who is committing the fraud and what their intentions are. And the hyper aggression that is being shown by these Somalis whenever a Nick Shirley shows up at the door and says, "So you're a daycare, huh? Where are the kids?" And when we're seeing people doing this in Ohio as well, the aggression that they're showing shows that this is not just white collar money laundering. These people here have an agenda, and I think this video from yesterday exposes some of that agenda.
Islam's coming to America.
Islam's coming to America?
Yes, it's coming.
Wait, is this going to be
one day America will become a Muslim state, a Muslim country.
Really?
Tell Trump.
That's never going to happen.
Yes, it will happen.
Never going to happen.
God is powerful.
Never gonna
God is powerful.
Is that what everybody here wants? You want to see
that's
a Muslim
what
country?
our goal is to make America Islam.
Really?
Islamic state.
Look.
Yes. God is powerful.
It's never going to happen.
You control the heart of Americans. God guides whom He wills.
Over my dead body will this become an Islamic
يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم
like this.
والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون.
All right, JR, you heard it. It's not just about the graft. It's not just about the money. It is, we are here to take over, and the United States will be an Islamic country. That is the pledge that you just heard.
Yeah, over my dead body. At the end of the day, Bob, we take a look at this. I've said this on my social media, and I can say it here again. These Somalis, now, if you think that they're the brain trust behind this, which I know you're not insinuating, but for people listening, if you think that these Somalis are behind the brain power that put all this fraud together, you're sorely mistaken. Now, let me tell you why I know this to be a fact. The average IQ of a Somali is 66 points. That's one of the lowest.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah. People don't think that's a thing. That's real.
I've been saying this for months, and actually a little bit over a year. Somalis, and again, this isn't to be condescending. This is not to be racist or anything like that, but they have the IQ average of 66. America's 99. They have a huge problem with inbreeding. And if you ever hear someone say, well, wow, Ilhan Omar and this other Somali person, they have similar features. It's because inbreeding has been a problem for centuries in the Somali society, and their IQ and certain things have suffered for it. These folks were promised a bag of goods, and the bag of goods is tied with their religion. And the Muslim religion, a certain faction of it at its core, is about dominating and conquering, and they seek to do that through using religion as a leverage point. And it's always been that way for them. This should come as no surprise. What should come as a surprise is that they've been given the green light to believe that they're to come here and transform the United States into an Islamic state. And if they do so, here's the free money that they can get. All they have to do is run this laundering operation guised as a daycare. And they're smart enough to realize that, but they're not smart enough to put together this scheme. This is the Amy Klobuchars and the Tim Walls and the Ilhan Omars and Marcy Captors of the world. And we need to take a fine-tooth comb to all this stuff. And I think as we see it spreading from places like Minneapolis to potentially Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, Cleveland, as long as we keep running that comb, I think we're going to pull up so many more cities. I think this is something that we're going to find is common spread.
Yeah, I think it's nationwide, to be honest with you. And in fact, so do a lot of other people. I think Byron Donalds was talking about that yesterday too when they left the oversight committee hearings on Minnesota's fraud. But here in Ohio, again, I don't think a lot of people thought it was to the level that it is. You know, Nick Shirley exposed, you know, what he basically counted with all of the places they went to in about 6 hours, adding how much money they all received in federal funds of $110 million with in places that had no evidence of children or evidence of daycare being provided. And it's not just the daycare, it's the transportation services, which again, all they have to do is turn in logs and saying we drove people from here to there, and then the states or the state and the feds start just flooding them with money for it. They don't have to prove it. Same thing with home health care. You know, somebody's watching their own father, and then they, you know, add in 5 or 6 more people, and they you know, even if they don't exist. Point being, though, obviously here, this fraud is not just in Minnesota. It is in Ohio. It is in probably more than just the giant Somali community of Columbus. It's in the other states, but we're seeing evidence of it being as far, you know, east as Massachusetts. There was a massive investigation that was done there that showed several dozen Somali-run daycare centers. I don't know whether they're going door to door yet, like they are here in Ohio. And then as far west as Seattle, the same thing. You know, just so we're talking about probably across all 50 states, if not close to it, that this fraud is going on. So without Doge being, you know, back in vogue, you know, their work was largely wrapped up and unfulfilled, quite frankly. How do we stop it? How do we stop it nationwide? You know, we got a state by state thing going on here, but it really has encompassed the whole country, JR.
Well, I think that's where we fail as a Congress and as legislators, is that, you know, we don't take the common business approach to problem solving. We don't continue asking why. We say, well, why was there daycare fraud in Minneapolis? Oh, because these Somalis were cheating the system. Oh, okay. Somalis were here because of Democrats. Let's blame the Democrats. It's their fault. What we don't ask is, why are they doing that? Why are the Democrats doing this? Why is this possible? How is it possible? And then we get to the, you know, the root cause of the issue, and then we can, you know, see how this probably transcends into any portion or function within the government that's receiving some type of grant or taxpayer based stipends. And fraud is knows no limits. And I think daycare was just something, again, picked up because it was being subsidized so much by the federal government, by our tax dollars. And I think if we continue to ask the questions and not just be satisfied with who to blame, I think we can solve many more problems in this country, not just this one.
Yeah, you know, I hope so. I said this before, and I don't want to be too redundant, but you know, people have died for less than exposing multi-billion-dollar fraud rings. I just, you know, and I'm legitimately worried about some. Like I said, the hyper-aggression being shown by some of the people in responding to Mehek Cook, for example. She's been assaulted twice.
Yeah.
You know, and she's out there, and some other people are a little bit. You know, Nick Shirley, again, he's got massive security around him right now. I just wonder, you know, how strong the appetite is going to be to expose all of this stuff that people are start to put in danger. If we can just focus on Ohio, like I said, you know, my friend Jack Windsor, who you know, does a show in Columbus and runs the Ohio Press Network. He went out around with John Rocker and was doing some of the same investigations in some of the same areas and locations that Mehek was. And the video, JR, is very, very telling. Like I said, it's not just, no, there's nothing to see here. Thank you. Have a good day. It's aggressing. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. And I don't know. My point being that I think they're going to ratchet up the danger of exposing these kind of things, and I just wonder if we're ever going to get to the bottom of it because of that.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever will, but I can tell you that's why the Democrats select these folks in this demographic of immigrant society as a target to push these things through, because they're easily manipulated. But again, going back to what I said, if we push to get to the root of the problem. And another thing this ties back into is with Josh Williams. You know, Josh is the only state legislator that I know of that reacted to this and said, hey, he wrote a letter saying, you know, this is what I call on the state of Ohio to do. And that's, you know, start looking into these childcare centers. But here's where you can go a step forward. Josh should be calling for the subpoena of every audit and every IG or inspector general or auditor's report on every daycare and the daycare economy within the state over the past few years. Were there red flags that weren't picked up by the auditor's office? Were there red flags that weren't picked up by third party organizational entities, within our job and family services group within the state that missed opportunities or windows of opportunities to do their jobs, which is prevent these types of incidents from occurring? I would wager that that's never going to be done, but that's how you fix the problem. You don't fix the problem by looking through the rearview mirror and saying, oh, well, if we would have just asked the question a little bit harder, we would have gotten the right answer. No, they're going to cheat no matter what. That's why we have audits in place. That's why there's a quality assurance and quality control school of methodology here in the country, because we have to ensure that fallible humans don't make stupid mistakes.
Jerry, I want you to speak to race if you can real quick, because I fail to see how as much of this as we're just kind of uncovering because of citizen journalism. I fail to understand or believe that the government could not have known about this. Government officials could not have known about this. And I wonder if the role that race plays here isn't more outsized. People don't want to expose the Somali fraud because they're Somalis. They're black or brown or whatever you want to call them. And they don't want to be, viewed as being racist for targeting. In fact, hell, I didn't plan this with you. I wonder if I can find it in short order. I can. Look at this. I'm going to share this, JR. This is kind of what I'm talking about. The role of race in this, I think, is much bigger than people realize. Let me pull this up. This is who is she? And Miss Randall. Let me get to the text of the tweet here. Representative Emily Crandall from Washington attacks white men during the hearing yesterday on Capitol Hill in the Oversight Committee on the Somali fraudsters, trying to say that if you attack the Somalis, it's because you're a racist. The real problem here is white men. Listen to this.
We can trot out all of the data that we want to create the sense that there is a bad guy. There is a bad group of people. There are folks who are not among us. There are folks who are other. And I think we should spend a lot more time looking at ourselves, looking at American citizens, looking at white men who are committing violence at disproportionate rates in our country, who are committing crimes at disproportionate rates in our country, including the President of the United States, who is sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, as so many of my colleagues have pointed out. I also want to say, I've heard a lot about the Somali donors to political campaigns. We all acknowledge, right, that you cannot donate to a political campaign in the United States unless you are an American citizen, right? I'm just going to acknowledge that.
She's just going to acknowledge that, like those laws are followed. So this representative went on to quote, and I've got, what I did last. I'm sure you're familiar with John R. Lott Jr. from Crime Prevention Research Center. So I got this information yesterday, and I read an article. I saw that video, and I read an article accompanying it. As far as what her allegations are. Her allegations are that white people commit more of the murders in this country, particularly white males. She came out there with these very, very narrow, cherry-picked statistics. She said that 41% of murder suspects in the United States in 2023 were white, and that the database tracking domestic extremism found the majority of the suspects of domestic extremism are white. She went on to say that, I'm trying to find the other numbers, that the overwhelming majority of people committing violence in the United States are males. So she's taking one stat about 41% of whites and then males in another thing and saying, so therefore white males are the problem. So JR, I sent this yesterday to John Lott, last night, in fact. I said, John, please, because he's got all of the statistics. The Crime Prevention Research Center is phenomenal. He does incredible work. And I said, John, please destroy these stats. Because we all know the reality
Right.
that, because we hear the 1350, statistics cited a lot because it's accurate. 13% of the population, which happens to be African American in this country, commit over 50% of the murders, which is extraordinary. So I knew these couldn't be right. And John sent me back a note saying, this is so stupid. In 2023, Black or African Americans were arrested for 57.2% of the murders in this country. Whites, 40%. And again, that's 70% population versus 13% of the population. And among the 40.1% of the whites, it includes Hispanics, what they call white Hispanics. So obviously, whites are committing murder at a fraction of the per capita rate that blacks are. So the point to all of this, JR, being, we're not allowed to say that. We're not allowed to say such things because it makes us, because we're in the majority, sound racist against the minority. And I'm wondering, do you think that all of this fraud in Minnesota, in Ohio, and in some of the other places that they're finding it has been there in plain sight, but officials are terrified to say that there is a massive Somali African fraud ring going on and committing all of this fraud in the United States of America? Because they're terrified of the narrative of being racist.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I would assume a good portion of it has to do with it. Sure. I think probably the even worse is that they're not saying anything because they're in on it. And for a long time we've been forced to be in this mindset of speaking in a certain way because it's considered politically correct. But again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. This is just all a mechanism for the Democrats to push forward, the color revolution. And they do so by creating a monster and projecting on that monster and then turning everybody against that monster by saying that there's nothing for them through, by way of this person. We need to move on to this form of governance, or we need to move on to this leader. And then that tyrant then comes along and basically never cashes in on the commitments and flips the country on its head. And that's where these left-wingers are taking us. They don't realize that some of the things that they say and some of the way that they have manipulated our vocabulary have been detrimental. And really, this isn't now that's to the Democratic strategists, right? They're the ones that are planting all these seeds. To the average liberal weirdo like that lady, who's obviously a representative, but I mean, look, they're not the smartest boots or people in the classroom. I would assure you that this lady believes everything she's saying, and it's not about to her whether the stats are accurate or inaccurate. It's about the fact that she believes them to be true. And the left has become so surface level with their aspirations for information that they grab everything that they want, and they play on the fact that our society is an immediate society, meaning we want to be able to pick up our phones and Google it. And if we can't do that, then it doesn't exist. And everything has just come to fruition with them because, again, they've teamed up and strategized and planned it out, where Republicans, we can't get our shit together enough to have a budget.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's exactly correct, JR. And, it's just, I hate surrendering to the left's agenda, and the left's agenda is to put race above everything. It's identity politics, and it's not necessarily for the races of the people. They don't get, or the other marginalized groups, the protected classes, the LGBTQ, or whatever it is that they're doing. It's simply about, here's how we get away with what we want to. Anybody who criticizes us is a bigot. Anybody who disagrees with us is a homophobe, a transphobe, a racist, ethnocentrist, or whatever it is that they're going to do. They try to marginalize or try to demonize anybody who criticizes marginalized groups. And that's probably why they've gotten away with this for so long. At the end of the day, do you think any heads will roll in Minnesota? I mean, Tim Walz sees the walls closing in enough to the point where he said he's not going to run again because he's going to have to defend all of this crap in a campaign. So he's just like, I'm not going to do it. But do you think there will be actual accountability in the form of charges if all of this stuff was going on and they knew it, but they just looked the other way for, whatever reason that they have?
Yeah, I think the left at this point, especially on any stage that could potentially lead to impacting the governor's race or the presidential race, they're going to have to be honest when they're caught like this. And where the left will shine is that they'll make Tim Walz their sacrificial lamb. They'll hang him, and they'll do it at public square, and they'll make a mockery of him, and they'll disassociate themselves from him, and their base will totally accept that sacrifice. They'll move on with their day, and it'll all be forgotten. And Republicans, unfortunately, probably won't be at the right position to criticize and leverage the opportunity to pursue the narrative, because we're too busy infighting. Unfortunately, we're too busy infighting.
Well, you're obviously right, but JR, some of what we do, some infighting has to happen. Like I'm never going to get done fighting Mike DeWine, to be honest with you, because he's not doing what's right for the state. And as a matter of fact, hell, if somebody put a gun to your head, JR, and said, choose your governor, you can be governed by Tim Walz or Mike DeWine, would you flip a coin? Because I kind of feel like I would. I don't think there's much of a difference.
Probably. Yeah, and you're right. You're right about that. I mean, I think there's opportunity. Like, you and I talked via text message, and, you had asked me what my positions and what my thoughts were on Vivek and Rod McCauley. And like I said, I don't like to criticize my friends publicly before I give them the opportunity privately. But like I, tried to say when I was giving my opinion, which is that the base isn't happy, didn't necessarily say that J.R. Majewski's not happy. What I said was that I trust on the instinct that got Vivek here, that decision was made with the intent of him being the governor in mind, and I support him. I support his intuition. So I'm going to support the selection. I'm not going to publicly admonish him for it. But if the situation comes where I see something that I could help prevent, I will. I'll let Vivek know in person or in private before I go out on socials. And I know you operate in the same regard.
I do 100%. And I want the next Republican governor. First of all, I want the next governor to be a Republican. And second of all, I want him to be hugely successful. And every time I've talked to Vivek, he has laid out an agenda that is very aspirational and I think achievable, though. It's going to be over time. And so I'm with that. And I want to try to convince, conservative Republicans, to shake off their doubts and whatever their concerns are. And I'm still going to give a fair conversation tomorrow. I'm going to talk to Casey Putch. I'm going to talk to everybody, and I'm going to try to really, ferret out what we need to about all of these guys. But yeah, at the end of the day, Vivek is extraordinarily well funded. He's already got the Trump endorsement. He's already got the state behind him. So it's probably going to be a real, difficult thing for anybody to challenge. But when push comes to shove and it's Vivek Ramaswamy and Rob McCauley versus Amy Acton and David Pepper, I mean, is there even really a choice?
No, not at all. And you know what, Bob? The same thing happened, and I know you know this very, very well, with J.D. Vance when he was selected by Donald Trump, endorsed by Donald Trump in the Senate race. Many of us had, I personally had a relationship with almost every candidate, and I liked all of them. In the beginning, and for the most part, Mike Gibbons was my favorite, and Mike was a personal friend. I thought he represented my intentions as far as what a senator would do, the closest. But I didn't think we can go wrong with any of the selections. And I remember getting a call by all of them asking if I would endorse them, and I declined. I wanted to stay neutral, get to know all of them. And I remember distinctly the president calling me a couple weeks before he was going to endorse, asking me if I knew JD and what I thought about him, what I thought about Mike, what I thought about Bernie. And I gave him my opinions, and he asked me who would I endorse, and I told the president, I said, sir, I've told them that I'm going to support whoever you pick. And he said, okay. And he called me. Then he called me about 2 weeks later, the night before he was going to endorse JD, and asked me if I thought it was a good selection. I said, yeah, I like JD. And he made the endorsement the next day. And right away, there were people upset. JD's this, Peter Thiel this, Peter. And I told them all. I have a tweet that, well, I've had my Twitter cleansed, but one of my largest tweets ever was me saying that I've campaigned with JD. I watched him go and talk to a group of people that loved him and Donald Trump just because they're MAGA and cheered him on, to driving 15 minutes down the road and talking to a bunch of angry and upset mothers who've lost loved ones, to our drug epidemic, and JD be able to talk to them and console them. I've seen that happen within a window of a couple hours, and it was all honest and true. And JD won a lot of people over on those campaign steps. And I told people on Twitter that Ohio loves JD. Some of them just don't know it yet. And that's what happened. I have a pretty good ability to pick the right people in life to stay away from and get to know. And JD was one of the guys. He actually came up to me at a speech that I gave at the Catawba Island Club after I talked about my campaign, and he was touched by my speech. And after that conversation, we were texting buddies, and been a fan of his ever since.
No, that's a great story. And he did do and say a lot of those things, back in 2016 about President Trump. But he's allowed to evolve, and just like President Trump used to be a Democrat, a liberal one. Ronald Reagan used to be a Democrat. I used to be a Democrat. We are all allowed to evolve our thinking on certain things. And JD Vance, between 2016 and 2022, when he ran for the Senate, very different guy. And what we've seen over the course of his Senate run, his Senate period of time, and then of course as vice president, has been incredible. So your instincts were right. I think that's clear. Well, JR, I appreciate you dropping the knowledge on us, man. Really, really great analysis of all of this stuff. Keep up the phenomenal work. I mean, I don't have to tell people where to find you on social because you have a massive following. But just look up J.R. Majewski on all of your social platforms. Make sure you are following him so you can get a lot of great information the way I do. And J.R., I enjoyed it, man. I hope we can do it again.
Hey, anytime, brother. You let me know when you need me, and I'm here for you.
We'll do it. Thank you, J.R.
All right, Bob. Thanks, buddy.
That's J.R. Majewski right here on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered on this Thursday. Really appreciated all of that. We're going to take a short time out here, and that means I'm going to give you some music and some graphics while I get set up for our next guest. You probably saw this already, so you know who it is. Yeah. From J.R. Majewski to our friend Dr. Everett Piper. He's going to join us here in just a couple of minutes after I take this short time out. Stay here. We are not done. We have a long way to go on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. All right, we've used our final timeout of the half. So what do you say we get it going again here? Turn that music down just a little bit. There we go. And great stuff from J.R. Majewski, former congressional candidate, and again, a tremendous political analyst. Really, really enjoyed that. So I have not been in the chat much today because of our conversation with JR that lasted pretty much a full hour. But it looks like we've got a really nice crowd of folks kicking all of this stuff around. Don't forget, if you're in the chat on Rumble, and you know, I'm still pushing this out. This broadcast is going out on the Facebook page as well as YouTube. And I always intend at the 30-minute mark to cut the feed to those other places and to tell people to please migrate over to Rumble, because we want all people to be, if we can, in the same place so you can join in the chat and share ideas and ask questions of our guests and so forth. And also just we can build up our algorithmic power, because again, we have to start out growing a show like this with the grassroots. We all have to do our part. And then organically it will get pushed out by the algorithms, but only when we have a concentration of activity in and engagement on the Rumble page. So yeah, so we're still pushing out over YouTube and Facebook. But for those who are on Rumble, thank you for watching here and for the comments as well. And please don't forget the Rumble Rants button at the bottom, the one with the $sign on it. If you can help support this show and this broadcast, if you like what we're bringing, please consider doing so. So really great stuff from J.R. Majewski. And now what I want to do is I want to bring in our next guest. He is Dr. Everett Piper. He is a former university president. He is a columnist. He is an author, a best-selling one at that, and he hosts his own podcast called The Rebellion. Dr. Piper, live from Oklahoma. Good morning, my friend. How are you, sir?
Hey, Bob. I hope you can hear me okay, and we're connected well here.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. So, Dr. Piper, I want to get into, as we often do, right away. I'll share this window real quick. This is just a link to your article, your most recent column in the Washington Times. Questions everyone should be asking Zoran, I call him Zoltar Mamdani. What does he really believe about Islam? I want to get into that, but not right away. I want to start, actually, Dr. Piper, with your analysis of what happened yesterday in Minnesota, because everybody's got a view on this. You see the continued harassment, obstruction of ICE agents in particular, but law enforcement, bigger picture, from the radical leftists. They're getting in the way and obstructing and putting themselves in harm's way, and eventually something was going to happen like what happened yesterday. One agent who was literally in front of the vehicle as she gunned it at him, whether to try to hit him or to try to get away is irrelevant. She was driving directly at him instead of following orders and getting out of her vehicle. And so the agent shot her and killed her. And now the left is apoplectic, calling this Trump's fault, saying his surging to go and break up families with ICE agents and so on and so forth is what led to this shooting. And it's the agent's fault. It's everybody's fault except for the lawbreakers and those who are obstructing justice, as far as I have seen it. What did you see yesterday, and what's your reaction?
Well, something the left is prone to do. In fact, they're very good at it. They've practiced it over and over again, and that is the issue of psychological projection. They project onto others the very things that they themselves say and do. So they continue to claim that the right is guilty of aggression, guilty of violence, guilty of hate, intolerance, and in all these situations, in fact, that's exactly what they do. So they say, I can't tolerate your intolerance, for example. Well, that in and of itself is an intolerant position. Or I hate hateful people. Well, that demonstrates that you yourself are hateful when you say that you hate the hateful people on the right. They're very good at projecting their own sins, if you will, to use Christian language, onto others. So they're constantly pointing their finger out the window at what everybody else is doing, accusing them of being the problem, being responsible for all that's wrong with society, while they refuse to look in the mirror and recognize that it's their rhetoric, it's their actions, it's their behavior that's leading to this dysfunction in the first place. The perfect example is the attempted assassination on President Trump. I mean, they continue to call people Hitler and Nazis. They continue to accelerate and exacerbate the situation with all of this inflammatory language. And then when somebody actually acts upon their rhetoric, acts upon their language, tries to go shoot, quote unquote, Hitler, then they blame the right and they blame the victim for the actions of the criminal. They blame Trump for somebody shooting him. They blame Charlie Kirk for somebody killing him. They blame this ICE agent for defending himself. Was it himself or herself? When indeed the car was pointed at them as a weapon to take them out. In other words, these people were acting upon the inflammatory language, the increased hateful rhetoric of the left, and then the left, when it actually results in violence, they claim the violence was caused by the victim. They do it over and over again. It's constant. They continue to dumb down language, they redefine the situation, and then when people act upon their lies, their aggression, their rhetoric, they accuse those people that were simply defending themselves and trying to enforce the law. I mean, that's one way to critique this. Another way is just simply asking this question: why is it wrong for a police officer or an ICE agent or anybody else that's pledged to defend the safety of the public? Why is it wrong for them to do so? And why is it right for somebody to jump in a car and use it as a weapon, or to do anything else that's intentionally harmful or violent directed toward one of these agents? I mean, this is something we really need to wrestle with as a society. If every time somebody is hurt or put in handcuffs or, God forbid, killed as the result of their violent actions and their criminal activity, if every time that happens, it's the responsibility and the fault of those people that are enforcing the laws, then we are a nation without laws. And that's a very dangerous place for us to be.
Yeah. And, that's what the reaction of the mayor of Minneapolis was. I want to share this if you didn't see it already. And for people who are here at the beginning of the show this morning, I played this in the first segment. So they've already seen it, and they know there's some language in it. But I think people should hear that language so they can know this is leadership of Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is Mayor Jacob Fry in response to what happened yesterday with the officer defending himself as somebody pointed a loaded weapon at him. And yes, a vehicle with a person's foot on the gas is a loaded weapon, just the same as if it were a firearm. He fired to defend himself. And the agent is the one who took the blame here from Mayor Jacob Fry. I want to get your reaction to this, Dr. Piper. Listen.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done.
All right, Dr. Piper, I'm going to refrain from saying anything I want to say right now because I want to hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
He says there's little he can do to make the situation better. Lie, not true. All he needed to say was, I disagree with ICE. I disagree with President Trump and the way he's trying to address this situation. But you citizens that have elected me to be mayor, what I'm asking you to do is calm down. I want you to tap the brakes and don't return violence for violence. If you disagree with what ICE did, fine. Let's be civil, let's be adult and have a conversation about this. We can address this through conversation dialogue, and we can address it at the ballot box. But do not get angry and do not get violent. That is not the way to resolve this. That's all he needed to say. Now, in what I just said, I'm implying that people don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I agree with the premise of everything I just said, that Donald Trump is wrong for trying to enforce the law. But if I were in this man's shoes, is what I'm saying. If I were a Democrat, if I leaned toward his political viewpoint, Barack Obama could have done the same thing. He could have tamped down the rhetoric. He could have told people to calm down. He could have done what Martin Luther King Jr. did, and that is preach resistance but condemn violence. Could have done that. And this guy is actually turning up the heat. He's increasing the rhetoric by using the F-bomb, this and that. In other words, what he just said is go out into the streets and tell everybody to F off. Tell ICE to F off. Go out into the streets and get more angry. Give Donald Trump and this administration and all Republicans the middle finger and tell them to F off. Is that calming people down? Is that encouraging civil dialogue? Is that encouraging people to act like adults rather than spoiled children? Absolutely not. What he did is exactly the opposite of what a responsible Democrat would have done back in the day. But I don't even know if there is such a thing anymore. It's an oxymoron now to talk about a responsible Democrat.
Yep. Yeah, you beat me to it at the same time. It is an oxymoron. And by the way, the one thing as he spoke and said all of that, and I'm going to play another clip here. Don't respond to violence with violence was part of what you just said there. And the problem with that is it was the officer who responded with violence to violence. The violence is being committed against the agents from the start. Especially again, when you're talking about a loaded weapon, a vehicle is the same thing as pointing a gun at an officer, especially when you gun it and you can see in the video, the wheels spinning. It wasn't a slow pull out to try to get by. It was I floored it with that officer in front of me. That's violence. And he responded, but this is how it went down after, Dr. Piper. I'm going to play this. And we're going to see what violence looks like, as law enforcement officers are trying to do their job and enforce laws. Look at all of the violence that takes place and the obstruction.
Move! Get out of the way! Get out! Chris, get out the way! Get out the way of the truck! Move! Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
This is Dr. Piper. This is pure anarchy, is what this is. And they're throwing snowballs and ice balls at the officers. They're swinging umbrellas at them. And the officers are doing their best to just use the pepper spray to move people away. And they're pushing them out of the way and saying, get out of the way, get out of the way. And I got to tell you, I don't like some of the tactics of the officers there because they're not hitting them hard enough. They need to throw them to the ground aggressively and keep them there with handcuffs or zip ties on them to show that they're to provide a deterrence against this type of activity. You are obstructing justice. You're obstructing the enforcement of law. That is a crime. You're going to jail. Leave them laying in the snow cold while zip tied until you bring a flatbed or something and pile them on like freshly killed game and take them to the jail. Then maybe the next time there's an ICE enforcement operation going on, the people will think twice about coming down there and attacking cops and federal agents. I'm done. I'm done playing Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm done watching these officers have to deal with all of this when they're doing the jobs that they are sworn to do. Dr. Piper, go ahead.
Well, I do think there's a distinction here. When I said that the Democrat mayor should tell his people to calm down rather than inflame the situation, I mean that. He should do that. But he's speaking in the context of the law, that I want you to obey the law. If you disagree with what's going on, obey the law. Mm-hmm. That's what he should be saying. Now, on the other side, you have the law. You have law enforcement agents. And by definition, they're charged to enforce the law. And if somebody is breaking the law, either violently or otherwise, it is their responsibility to do their job, not to lower themselves to their level and shout back and yell back and push back, but to simply enforce the law. And if necessary, by force. I agree with you 100%. The right action for the ICE agents would have been not to yell, not to shout, to simply grab the people, put them in handcuffs, and put them on the ground, and then move on to the next person and do the exact same. Be quiet and walk away. Let them lay there until the paddy wagon comes along. You put them in it and you take them to jail because they broke the law. And nobody, this mayor included, should be criticizing law enforcement officers for doing that. And there are times when there's a reason our police carry guns, because there's a time when they likely will have to use it. And therefore, if somebody is breaking the law to the extent that they're endangering someone else's life, then enforcing the law is going to involve using the weapon that has been given to them as the ultimate measure of legal enforcement. This is the nature of a civil society. This is the nature of a country, a nation, a community that's governed by laws. And a nation without laws is no nation at all. And with regard to this ongoing argument that we have, oh, they're coming in and they're threatening our citizens. They don't even say citizens. They're threatening the residents of our community that have contributed so much. They don't say citizens because they're not citizens. They've broken the law, and they should be held accountable for breaking the law. That doesn't mean that the officers get violent with everybody. It means you knock on their door, they show us your documentation. If you can't show us your documentation, you need to come down to the police station or the ICE agency and talk to us. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And notice in this video clip that you just shared, this ongoing screaming of Nazis. Where is that coming from? It's coming from AOC. It's coming from Bernie Sanders. It's coming from Kamala Harris. It's coming from the leadership on down to the rank and file of everybody in the Democrat Party right now. They're not condemning this inflammatory language. They're encouraging it, and the end results are predictable. Ideas always have consequences, and this idea of labeling your opponents the most evil people in modern history, Nazis and Hitler, is going to have a negative consequence. Period. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah, that is exactly right, and it's quite frankly embarrassing that we even have to point out the obvious as much as we do, and that it's frustrating to me. Again, I believe in deterrence, and I believe that harsh consequences for bad actions deter future harsh actions or bad actions, and they
One
do.
other
They
word
need
on
to.
this, Bob.
Yeah.
Forgive me for interrupting, but to
not at all.
drive home one of your points further. Before I was served as the president of university, my 10 years or more prior to that was a dean of students, vice president for student development. I was the chief disciplinarian at a couple different colleges and universities. It was my job to enforce the law, to enforce the policies of the school. And one of the lessons that I taught to my coaches, I always told my coaches, look for an opportunity at the beginning of your season to crack down and enforce the rules. Don't ignore the rules. If one of your players breaks school policy, lower the boom. Enforce the maximum penalty for his infraction. Why? Well, number one, it's the right thing to do. Our student handbook calls for it. But number two, what does it do? It sends a signal to the rest of your team. Don't screw around. Don't break the rules, because if you do, you won't play. And every time my coaches would come back and tell me, thank you for the advice, because at the beginning of the season, quite frankly, pragmatically, kicking a kid out of school for a week for breaking the rules probably isn't going to hurt your record all that much, because you probably aren't even participating in any intercollegiate gameplay yet. You're just in preseason practice. So if you can lower the boom during preseason and let everybody know you are going to enforce these rules, and if you break them, there will be consequences. Guess what? You've got a lot more freedom, a lot more peace, and you're going to have a greater victory. At the end of the day, you're going to have a winning season rather than a losing season, because you didn't have to kick your starting lineup off the team. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Absolutely right. And I'm glad to hear you point that out. It's a great example. Dr. Piper, we've got time for your column, because I want to talk about this. We focused so much on Ohio corruption and fraud, Minnesota corruption and fraud, and what happened yesterday. I don't want to lose sight of what's happening in New York City. Just minutes after he was sworn in on New Year's Eve to New Year's Day, Zoltar Mamdani took to the microphone and announced New York City is now going to be communist. He dressed it up a little bit with the word collectivist, but they are literally synonymous. And let's hear it.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Rugged Rugged individualism is what this country was founded upon, by a bunch of rugged individuals who said that individuals have rights, the rights to live their lives as they see fit, and the government that they elect will serve them, not be crushed by said government who is going to serve the collective and destroy individuals. That's the communist side of Zohran Mamdani that we have to deal with. And Dr. Piper, you, as I pull up your column once again from this week in the Washington Times, you are pointing out we also have to deal with the Islamist side of Zohran Mamdani. And you asked some questions that people should be asking about this guy and his commitment to, and let's all remind everyone, he was sworn in. He took his oath of office as mayor of New York City on 2 Qurans. One, and I don't know the exact difference between them, but one of them I am told was an old school, old version of the Quran that literally talks about the worst things that you have ever heard of Islam, as far as killing, and as killing or converting anybody who is an infidel and a non-believer. He put his hand on, swore on that he was, as he took over New York City. Dr. Piper, take it from there.
All right, here are the facts. Zohran Mamdani was sworn in twice. There was one ceremony down in the subway. I guess there was some sort of symbolic, I don't know what, but he was sworn in at one of the famous subway stops. And then he was sworn in up above ground again.
Mm-hmm.
If people go out and look at the picture of him being sworn in, I've had some folks challenge me on my article saying, well, it's not true. He only had his hand on one Quran. Well, that's the one that was up above ground. Go to the pictures of the one below ground, and he's being sworn in on 2 Qurans. So what's the significance of this? Why did he choose 2? Both of them say the same. There's no difference in terms of the actual text in either one of these Qurans. They're identical. One of them was his grandfather's. Okay, so there's some sentimental family value here in terms of that Quran.
Mm-hmm.
The other was published during the time of the Ottoman Empire.
That's
now, why do I draw attention to that? The Ottoman Empire symbolizes the pinnacle of Islamic conquest. When much of Southeast Europe and Northeast Africa was under the rule of Islam. When Islam had spread across Europe to the point where the Byzantine emperor was begging Pope Urban II to intervene and stop this. We've had several hundred years, literally, people need to remember this, we've had several hundred years of conquest, as much as 400 to 600 years of conquest, of colonialization, of imperial movement by the Muslim Empire, the Ottoman Empire, across Europe and across Northeast Africa and across the Middle East, conquering one Christian community and nation after another. The Byzantine Emperor comes to Pope Urban II and begs him to do what? Fight back. A holy war against this imperialization and conquest of the Christian world. That's the history of the Crusades. And quite frankly, Bob, I'm thankful for the Crusades. People demonize them as if it was some sort of bloodletting by the church. It was a just war, a holy war to fend off several hundred years of marching conquest of Islam across the civilized world, to stop it. And they, thank God, successfully did. Now, why would Mamdani choose this particular Quran upon which to swear his oath to the people of New York City and to God? I just think we should be asking this question. Why did you choose this particular one and what it symbolizes? The ultimate conquest of Islam over civilization, the Ottoman Empire. Why? Why would you do that? And then I remind people what every Quran says, specifically this one that Zohran Mamdani uses that represents Islam's conquest over the civilized world, where it says in Surah 2:191 that all infidels should be killed. Or Surah 9:5, where it says you should lie in wait to capture and besiege the disbelievers. Or Surah 5:33 and 8:21, where it says maim and crucify all those who will not bow the knee to Islam and anyone who criticizes the Muslim faith. In other words, I should be maimed and crucified because I'm being critical of Islam right now. Does Mamdani believe that? Because you just put your hand on the book that says you're supposed to do it. And then you have Surah 328, Surah 385, Surah 865, and Surah 9123, all of which say that the friends of Allah are not those people who deny Allah. In other words, anyone who's not a Muslim, and they are stupid, quote unquote, and that you are obligated to fight them, quote unquote, and make war with them at every turn, and not seek peace with people, but to behead them. Does he believe that when Surah 47:4 says that is going to be his governing philosophy? And if you're asked that question, Mamdani, and you say, no, I don't believe that, then why did you swear your oath to office on a book that tells you to do it? And I could go on, Bob. The Quran is very clear. And here's what you're going to hear from the left. Well, the Bible has violent verses in it too. What about the Canaan conquest, where Israel swept across Palestine, as we call it today, Canaan land, and conquered people and killed them? And the Bible seems to say that that's okay. Well, first of all, you need to understand the difference between descriptive literature and prescriptive literature. A lot of the war verses are descriptive. A lot of the stuff we read about in the Old Testament describes what was going on at the time. It doesn't prescribe that it was the morally right thing to do. And even in cases where it appears that God is saying, I want you to exercise this violent capital punishment against these people, do you realize that the people that God was speaking about at the time were sacrificing their live babies to Moloch? This was an evil culture that had gone so depraved it was irredeemable. And we need to remember that. We're not talking about democratic societies here or constitutional republics. We're talking about a society, a civilization, if you want to call it that, was engaging in child sacrifice on a routine basis. And God was saying, no, these people are so corrupt, you need to be done with them. Now, here's the other thing, the doctrine of abrogation that I've talked about before on your show. So when I'm responding to a leftist who says, well, the Bible says to do all this too, and you guys swear your oath to office on the Bible, look, Muslims understand the doctrine of abrogation. They know that the later verses always abrogate or supersede the earlier verses. That's just part of their theology. And guess what? It's the later verses that I just read that are the violent ones. So if you find peaceful verses in the Quran, guess what? Muhammad wrote them at a time he didn't have political or military power to win. So of course he was saying, oh, kumbaya, coexistence, be at peace with your neighbor. But as soon as he had political power and military power, he shifted over to the conquest and the violent verses that I've read. And Muslims know that the doctrine of abrogation calls for those verses, the violent ones, to supersede and trump the earlier verses, the peaceful ones. Guess what in Christianity? It's the opposite. Tell me one Christian, leftist, if there's a leftist listening to you right now, watching this show, Mr. Democrat, Mr. Leftist, Mr. Socialist, Mr. I voted for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, share with me one single Christian that you know that believes that they're supposed to live their life on the basis of the war verses found in the Old Testament. One. Show me one that believes that. You won't find that person because even as Bill Maher indicates, Christians don't believe that and they don't do that. Christians believe that the Sermon on the Mount trumps any violent verses in the Old Testament rather than the other way around. And the way we live our lives proves it. It proves it. Oh, but the Crusades, the church was violent. We were defending ourselves against the butchery of a very evil ideology that was sweeping across the Christian world. I mean,
I'm glad you called it ideology. I'm glad you called it ideology, Dr. Piper, rather than religion. You know, because it is. It's a political ideology. Islam is a political movement. It is not a religion. And I'm tired of people, because they use the word, God and say, Allahu Akbar, God is great, that it's somehow faithful. It is not about faith. It is about domination, world conquest. And to answer your question, I'm sure your question was rhetorical when you said, does Zoran Mamdani believe all of those verses, in the surahs that you quote in your article? Of course he does. It's not an accident that he took that oath that's on that second Quran, the one from the Ottoman Empire. It's not an accident. Of course he believes all of those things. He literally, and this is where he is emboldened, he didn't really hide anything. He ran his campaign on, yes, I am a socialist slash communist slash Marxist slash collectivist. They're all interchangeable in reality. I am one of those. And yes, I am a proud and devout Muslim. A devout Muslim. That means I am going to live up to the tenets of that book, the Quran, and I'm going to lead that way as well. He warned everybody, I'm a communist and a devout Muslim, which makes me by definition a radical and a threat to everything the United States was built upon. All of it. It's a Judeo-Christian nation built on individual rights. And he is literally the opposite of both of those. And he won by a landslide. He won by a landslide. So absolutely, he's emboldened by that, and he's going to govern that way. And New York is in very, very deep, serious trouble, and as is the country, because of the impact New York has on the rest of us. Last word to you, Dr. Piper.
Spot on, Bob. And what happens in New York ain't going to stay in New York. You know, what happens in Vegas is supposed to stay in Vegas. It doesn't. What is going on in New York is already spreading across the country. Look at Plano, Texas. Look at Dearborn, Michigan. Even in my own town of Bartlesville, Oklahoma, there is now an Islamic center. Now, stop and think about that. Why? Because this philosophy is a philosophy of dominance. It always has been. That's what jihad is for. It's ultimate dominance. It's also ultimate conquest and control. And the proof of it is the Ottoman Empire and what they did, the massive slavery, misogyny, beheadings, crucifixions, and the imposition of their ideology on anyone that disagreed to the point of death. They used the sword to impose their way. Why would Mamdani swear on a Quran that was published and used and read and obeyed during that time frame? It's a good question.
It absolutely is. And, you know, just to bring this thing home, and I know I said I was going to give you the last word, but I'm going to play something I played from my last guest just to get you to react to this too, to really kind of underscore the point you are making and the point that I join you in making with respect to this not being a religion, but being a political movement bent on domination and taking over. This is my state. You mentioned, Bartlesville. This is my state. This is down in Columbus, I believe. But they were investigating, as you have seen, the Somali fraud centers, known as daycare centers. And one of them involves this particular individual that you see here wearing the Muslim, whatever that cap is called or whatever. I want you to listen to what he says. They're talking about daycare and fraud, and listen to what this individual says, Dr. Piper.
Islam's coming to America.
Islam's coming to America?
Yes, it's coming.
Wait, is this going to be
one day America will become a Muslim state, a Muslim country.
Really?
Tell Trump.
That's never going to happen.
Yes, it will
That
happen.
is never going to happen.
God is powerful.
It's never going to
God,
Is that what you want?
God is powerful.
Is that what everybody here wants? You want to see
That's
a Muslim
what
country?
we are. Our goal is to make America Islam.
Really?
Islamic state. Yes.
The goal is to make America Islam, Islamic state. In plain English, yes, he actually spoke decent English, that guy. He made it very, very clear what his intention was. Now the last word to you, Dr. Piper, after seeing that.
Okay, this is not an aberration. Some of us are tempted to think, well, this is just a radical. There are moderate Muslims out there that don't believe that. Now, there may be moderate Muslims, okay? I'd be arrogant to suggest that there aren't. However, where are they? Who's leading it? What Muslim are you aware of that speaks out against this type of rhetoric? I don't know of any. And what we know is that in Pew Research, in a Pew poll that was done a handful of years ago, in Egypt, supposedly one of the more moderate Muslim states, 80% of the people, 80% of its citizens believe that capital punishment, the execution of adulterers, is the appropriate thing. Now, I don't believe in adultery as a Christian. I think it's sin, but I don't believe people should be executed for it. There's a big difference between these two worldviews. 80% of Egyptians think that's appropriate. And 80% of Egyptians think that abandoning the faith, being an apostate, denying Islam, converting to Christianity, should be punished by death. This is what these people believe. Stop buying the lie that this is an aberration, that what this guy is saying is somehow unusual and doesn't represent what most Muslims believe. That is not true. Most Muslims do believe this.
Well, and to really answer your previous question, about are there any moderate Muslims? You would be, it would be very arrogant to say that there aren't any. Those moderate Muslims, and there are some, they're the apostates. They're the ones that are not living up to what Islam calls for, which is all of the stuff you read from the Quran. And again, as you point out about prescriptive scripture rather than descriptive, this is what it is. The ones who are moderate and who don't believe in killing in the name of Allah are not true Muslims. They're apostates because that's what Islam and Allah calls for.
And the reason they're quiet is because they know if they speak up, they will suffer for it, maybe even suffer death. That's
Exactly
why
right.
you're not hearing from them.
Very, very well said. Dr. Everett Piper, remind everybody to make sure that you follow him. He has an X account, Dr. Everett Piper. Read his work in the Washington Times and listen to his podcast, The Rebellion. The Rebellion is a great listen as well. Dr. Piper, as always, I appreciate your insights. Great stuff today. Great stuff in the column as well. And we'll look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right. Blessings, Pop.
Thank you. All right, that's we're a little bit over time here, but that's okay because we don't have a hard corporate clock to follow. We can do whatever the hell we want. That's a beautiful thing. I don't know what's going on in the chat. Like I said, I've had back-to-back guests that have taken up the entire show, and let's see what's going on in the chat. Let me scroll back up a little bit just to see where we are. Cleveland Far West Sider Fed should pull these funds and tell the states that if it's worth keeping, the state needs to pay for it. Sarah says, JR was a great interview. She's right. Brian says, good morning, Bob. I'm here. Brian, thank you for being here. Lisa checked in. Don, HRRS, top of the day. Thank you, sir. Jim Bucks, JBucks1 is in the house. Good to see you, sir. CMG, thank you for being here every week, Dr. Piper. I really enjoy your commentary, Dr. Piper. We are of like minds in that regard. I always enjoy his commentary as well. Jan is in. Walls and Fry are fools that have led citizens of Minneapolis astray since the Floyd summer of violence. They refuse to abide by the law. There's no doubt about that. Yo Jimbo says, hook them up. I agree. And if I'm assuming he's talking about the zip ties or handcuffs. Dr. Piper, always looking forward to your wisdom from Lindy. What else do we have? John. Yes, 189 in the chat and only 73 likes. Yeah, come on. Let's hit that like button. People need to understand the importance of the engagement. The algorithms like when you are engaging with likes and with comments, not just in the chat, but underneath the actual video. Comment about the video when you're watching it. They like the engagement. That'll help us be pushed out to more people. Let's see. Politically Incorrect Mechanic says, I could listen to Dr. Piper for another hour. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll just do a full hour with Dr. Piper, or maybe a full 2-hour show with Dr. Piper, maybe a special. And by the way, speaking of that, I might as well make this announcement. The join, people have been asking me in the 4 weeks now that we've been doing this show, how come the join button doesn't work? If you look underneath the video screen right now, you see the join button there. And I've told people, don't worry about that yet. It's not set up. I believe it is set up now, or it will be by the end of the day. And that is the locals community that we are setting up for Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. The locals community, and I'm going to give you a super, super, super brief overview of it because I'm not 1,000% sure how it works completely. But the locals community is going to be like kind of like our own little Facebook group where, and hopefully it won't stay little, it'll be very, very large, but it's going to have opportunities for posts and for comments, and it's going to have specials. And there's going to be a free version of locals, and then there's going to be a $9.99 version of locals. And when you get the $9.99 version, you're going to get the special things like I was just talking about. I'll have Dr. Piper on for a full 2 hours, and the two of us will do something special just with the subscribing members. I'll have Bernie Moreno on, not for the full podcast like we did the other day, but we'll have him on for a special one-on-one or a town hall type format where you get to ask him questions directly. There's going to be special things that come with subscribing to Locals. This is one of the ways we're going to grow this. This is one of the ways it can stay on online. But yeah, we're going to want you to join Strictly Speaking Unfiltered, our Locals community, which is going to be a huge, huge addition to this. And there are going to be things that people who are subscribers get that people who are just casual visitors don't get. And so there'll be much, much more on that to come. Like I said, minuscule version of the description right now, but we'll have more information for you, well, probably by the end of the week, which is tomorrow. So let's see. Any other quick words of wisdom from the chat? B Butts says they all need to be removed. And if he's talking about the corrupt government officials who allow the fraud, I agree. Patriot Warrior Texas says, I'm not here. And yet I see him. SRL Bob, just listening while I drive around on my tow motor. Thank you for that. If you seriously, you know what? Gosh, I'm going to wrap it with this. Even if you can't watch, and hell, even if you can't listen on your tow motor, just do me a favor. Get on your phone, go to this channel, as soon as I sign off here even, and play one of the videos. You can turn the volume down. You don't have to listen to it. You don't have to watch it, but just let it play, because that's the other thing the algorithms like: engagement and time spent viewing. The more you watch, it doesn't know if your eyes are on it or not, but it sees you and registers yours as eyeballs that are on this channel, and that will help us out immensely as well. So while you're driving on the tow motor, keep it locked in. That's beautiful, or anything else that you're doing. And again, you don't even have to pay attention, although you should. Thank you to Dr. Everett Piper. Thank you to J.R. Majewski. And thank you to you for watching, for chatting, for being a part of this whole thing. It's an honor and a pleasure. We are near our 4th week ending. We've got a nice show for you tomorrow. Congressman Max Miller is going to make his debut on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. And we're going to get into the Ohio governor's race by talking to somebody you have not heard from yet, I'm assuming. Casey Putsch is a Republican candidate in the primary who wants to take down Vivek Ramaswamy. He says he's got the prescription to fix Ohio. I don't know much about him, but I know there are a lot of conservatives who have questions about Vivek who are turning to Casey Putsch and saying, I need to learn more about this guy. Tomorrow, I'll help you learn more about that guy. We'll have a lot of really good questions. And by the way, what do you want to know from him? What questions would you have for an outsider type of candidate like Casey Putsch? Send me an email between now and tomorrow morning. Send me an email to bob@strictlyspeaking.org, and I'll include your questions as well as what you ask in the chat of Casey Putsch. So make sure you're here tomorrow for that. Casey Putsch is, let me double check the calendar real quick before I lock out. Casey is tomorrow at 8 a.m. We're going to have him for the whole last hour from 8 to 9. Max Miller, Congressman, 7:30. And then Casey Putsch from 8 to 9 a.m. tomorrow. So if you're in the chat by 8 o'clock, get your questions queued up there for Casey Putsch, and I'll ask them. I'll pass them on to him and let him address them as he sees fit. All right? So big show tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll wrap our 4th week. Again, we're still in, as my friend Brian says, the zygote stage of this show. It's not even in its infancy yet. We're still being born and blossoming. So thank you to everybody for being here, everybody in the chat. Don't forget, drop something in the Rumble Rants jar if you can. And thanks for being here. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Let me send you out with some music, because why shouldn't I? And don't forget to send me the email. Thank you, everybody. Be well, be safe, stay free. Bye-bye.